Tonight on Ukraine Today, day of mourning in Kyiv. In just one night, Russia killed 31 people, including 5 children. The youngest was only 2 years old. The battlefield update, from Ukrainian advances in the Zaporizhzhia region to massive losses among Russian troops. $1 billion for Ukraine. It's part of the Pentagon spending bill, now backed by the US Senate committee. Trump's bold peace plan. The US president wants a ceasefire deal in Ukraine, signed by August 8. All that and more, coming up right now. Hello, my name is Volodymyr Robchun. Make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and let's get to the news. We begin with the fourth line situation. Ukrainian forces have advanced in the Zaporizhzhia region. That's according to the latest report from the Institute for the Study of War. Over the past day alone, Russia lost at least 940 troops killed and wounded. That brings the total to 1,054,200 Russian soldiers since the full-scale invasion began. Also, in the last 24 hours, Ukrainian defenders destroyed 1 Russian tank, 2 armored vehicles, 33 artillery systems and dozens more pieces of enemy equipment. Today is the day of mourning in Kyiv to honor the victims of yesterday's Russian strike. All rescue operations in the capital have now ended. In total, Russia killed 31 people, including 5 children. The youngest was just 2 years old. Another 159 people were injured. 16 of them are children. Our deepest condolences to the families and loved ones of the victims. Kyiv patrol officers released a video showing the aftermath of the missile strikes. These are the first minutes after impact. The footage shows the scale of destruction. Officers are seen helping residents evacuate, treating the wounded and securing the strike zones. This isn't just tons of concrete. These were people's homes. This is Alexandra. She lived in the apartment building hit directly by a Russian missile. She and her husband survived because they were at their country house that night. What's left of their home? A door, a set of keys, and a piece of balcony. Alexandra also lost her neighbors, close friends in that attack.
It's impossible to describe the horror. Recognizing a neighbor you had dinner with. I remember how he walked his daughter to her first day of school. We were all so happy. It felt like a real celebration. And now he's gone. He's gone along with his wife.
In Kramatorsk, the death toll from a Russian missile strike has risen to 3. Yesterday, the occupiers hit a residential neighborhood in the city center. At least 30 buildings were damaged.
There was a briefing for the EU ambassadors about Ukraine's sanctions policy, about our priorities. Our sanctions commissioner presented very detailed recommendations of what could hurt Russia the most. The ambassadors were also shown the remains of Russian missiles and Shahed drones, including those that hit residential buildings in Kyiv. None of these missiles, none of these Shaheds would be possible without components made in other countries and delivered to Russia through different schemes. Every single supply chain like that must be blocked, and that depends on our partners.
Today, Russian terrorists attacked the Dnipropetrovsk region. 3 children were trapped under the rubble of a private home. They were hospitalized. A 35-year-old woman was also injured. 2 farms, a school building, and a postal office were damaged. Explosions also rocked the city of Bila Tserkva.
I think it's Russia, I think it's disgusting what they're doing. I think it's disgusting. This is Biden's war, it's not my war. But I said if I get in, I'll try and get the thing stopped. But I think what Russia's doing is very sad. A lot of Russians are dying. You have a lot of Russians, more Russians are dying. But Russians are dying, Ukrainians are dying.
Trump wants to sign a deal to stop the war in Ukraine by August 8. That's according to Reuters. The US has officially informed the UN Security Council. Washington is ready to take additional steps to ensure peace. Putin now has 1 week to reach a deal with Ukraine. Meanwhile, the US Senate committee has approved $1 billion in military aid for Ukraine. It's a part of the Pentagon's budget bill. The final decision is up to the president. He can sign it or veto it. Either way, I'd say it's tightly linked to Trump's ultimatum, because financial pressure is good, but financial and military pressure even better. And now, Putin speaks. He says he's ready to stop the war and begin negotiations, but the conditions sounds a lot like demanding Ukraine's surrender.
Our conditions for starting such a dialogue are simple and go as follows. Ukrainian forces must be completely withdrawn from the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics, as well as from Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions. And I want to stress, from the entire territory of these regions, within their administrative borders as they existed at the time of their inclusion in Ukraine. As soon as Kyiv declares that it is ready for such a decision and begins the actual withdrawal of troops from these regions, and also officially notifies about the abandonment of plans to join NATO, an order to cease fire and begin negotiations will follow from our side immediately, literally at that very minute.
Okay, let's break this down. There are no such thing as Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics. There are Donetsk and Luhansk regions of Ukraine. Russia doesn't control any of them fully, and if it could, it would have done so already. Putin didn't mention Crimea at all, to pretend that's off the table. It's not. And whether Ukraine joins NATO or not, that's up to sovereign Ukraine and NATO members, not Moscow. Most importantly, a ceasefire and negotiations take just one order. If the Kremlin really wanted peace, that order would have been given long ago. But it wasn't, because Russia's real goal is to keep this war going. Putin just reminded us again. A counter-offer. Putin withdraws all troops from Ukrainian territory, including Crimea. Next, full demilitarization of Russia, a ban of all Russian military alliances, payment of reparations, and the extradition of all war criminals, starting with Putin himself. Now that sounds like a good deal to me.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Russian drones have been breaking through Ukraine's air defenses more and more often lately. Why is this happening? Details next.
Russia has been breaching Ukrainian defenses more and more frequently. According to the command of the Ukrainian Air Force, from April to June, on average about 15% of Russian drones reach their targets, whereas at the beginning of the year, this percentage was 3 times lower.
We felt relatively safe and secure. Even though we are currently at war with a heavily armed and exceptionally aggressive country that possesses a powerful, truly formidable military industry, which is fully geared for continuous warfare and is constantly and significantly increasing the sheer number of weapons it produces. And sometimes it manages, so to speak, to gain some local and temporary military advantages.
Experts note that Russia is increasingly using the so-called swarm tactic, simultaneously launching a large number of drones, which may include both combat drones and decoys. Drones have also started flying at higher altitudes, making them harder to destroy with machine guns.
Russia is now taking it out on the civilian population, intensifying strikes on our peaceful cities. It's clear that the number of Shaheds has increased. Not dramatically, but compared to last month, there have been 11.5% more launches, almost 6,300 launches compared to 5,140 last month. The number of ballistic missiles is also increasing. For example, this month, 43 Iskander-M missiles have already been recorded. Last month, there were 33 of them.
This month, Russia has launched 17 Kinzhal missiles at Ukraine and has also started using an upgraded version of the Kirenko drone.
The Russians are striking cities with what is hardest for us to counter, either massive Shahed drone attacks or ballistic missiles. Hundreds of Shaheds are flying toward Kyiv from all directions. That's the situation. And the strikes, of course, are carried out according to Russian military strategy. They target residential neighborhoods. Civilians are dying, children are dying, homes are burning, homes are being destroyed. But all of this is within the framework of Russian military strategy.
For now, it's difficult for Ukrainian air defense systems to cover everything that Russia is sending into our country. However, very soon our defense forces will be able to destroy many more attacks.
Now, anti-shade, specifically anti-shade high-speed anti-aircraft drones, will be used more extensively. And these successes the Russians are having in destroying the civilian population, they are temporary.
On July 10th, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, stated that the Ukrainian army had begun to effectively intercept dozens of drones using its own unmanned aerial vehicles. At that time, he also spoke about reaching an agreement with the American company Swiftbit on the joint production of hundreds of thousands of drones for the needs of the armed forces of Ukraine.
Ukraine is fighting for freedom. Support independent Ukrainian journalism so we can keep telling the truth about Russia's war. Click the link in the description to become our sponsor. And don't forget to like, subscribe, comment and share this video. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you. Polish President Karol Nawrocki and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had their first official phone call. It was initiated by the Ukrainian side. Nawrocki reaffirmed his support for Ukraine amid Russia's war, but he also said that the Polish nation expects Kyiv to rethink its approach to some important and still unresolved historical issues. New Russian attempts to interfere in Moldova's parliamentary elections. Putin is sparing no efforts and no money. Details in our next story.
Russia, as always, tries to impose its own rules in someone else's domain. The Kremlin is preparing a large-scale intervention in the parliamentary elections in Moldova.
Unlike the Western world, we generally do not meddle in other people's internal affairs.
The parliamentary elections in Moldova will take place on September 28th. And already now, according to President Maia Sandu, the Kremlin is not just interfering, but is preparing an unprecedented campaign to undermine the country's sovereignty and democratic institutions.
Starting this fall, Russia intends to control Moldova and is preparing an unprecedented intervention in the September elections. The risks to public order and national security are significant, and all institutions, as well as society as a whole, must recognize the danger and defend themselves against it. The Kremlin is investing in several political projects to get its people into the next parliament in order to gain control over power in the Republic of Moldova.
To undermine the democratic process, Moscow is deploying an entire arsenal of tools, from bribing voters and cyber attacks to large-scale information campaigns and paid rallies. The funding, of course, is being provided covertly, including through cryptocurrencies. According to Maia Sandu, about 100 million euros have been allocated for this. The aggressor country also plans to activate tried-and-true influence mechanisms in strategically sensitive regions such as Gagauzia and Transnistria. They will also mobilize the Moldovan diaspora abroad, whose turnout last year played a decisive role in the presidential elections and the referendum on European integration.
Russia has never left us alone. And since the 1990s, they have regularly interfered in our elections in one way or another. The difference now, of course, is that the scale has changed. Now, this is many, many times, perhaps by orders of magnitude, a more intense interference. Much more money is being spent, and their methods have become much more cunning. Now, they don't just need some pro-Russian force, as was the case before. Now, even some so-called pro-Europeans are playing on their side, and we actually know who they really are. And in this complicated and cunning way, they are now trying to change the balance of power in the Republic of Moldova.
The Russians are also acting through a chain of puppets and proxy structures. At the center of this scheme is the fugitive oligarch Ilan Shor, who was convicted in Moldova for multi-million-dollar embezzlement, but is actively involved in undermining the country from abroad. According to Chisinau, he is the main channel for funding pro-Russian projects, from bribing voters to organizing rallies staged for Russian media coverage.
Europe today is run by amateurs and
one such project is the Victory Bloc, which the Central Election Commission refused to register due to violations related to Shor. This sparked a strong reaction in Moscow, where they immediately started talking about the oppression of the opposition and Western interference.
the PAS party, Maia Sandu's party, has already begun taking appropriate steps to mobilize the maximum possible number of voters.
But we understand that Moscow's true goal is not fair elections, but revenge. The Kremlin is trying to divide Moldovan society along the lines of language, geography, and religion. Sound familiar?
If we had a shared border with Russia, this would have happened long ago, and there would hardly be anything here that could save us. But for now, What saves us is that Ukraine stands between us, holding strong, and the Odessa region. Putin has been eyeing it for a long time, but it has not surrendered. And we know that the enemy was driven out from near Mykolaiv, from near Kherson, and from Kherson itself as well. So right now they are quite far from us. The reserves they have here in so-called Transnistria, the uncontrolled regions of the Republic of Moldova, are not enough to do anything serious. Yes, there might be some local provocations, but even that I highly doubt, because Kyiv has repeatedly made it clear. Kyiv's official authorities have said to Chisinau, just let us know, and we will resolve this issue in a matter of days. In other words, that territory will be completely liberated. Our authorities don't want this. They don't want any real combat confrontation here, so they haven't given Kyiv such permission. But nevertheless, it had an effect.
Time goes on, but the aggressor country's playbook doesn't change. Absolutely everything is being used. Essentially, we're talking about a hybrid war where money, fake news, and distrust become weapons. And the goal is not only to influence the outcome, but also to destroy people's faith in the democratic process itself. All of this is happening as Moldova is on the verge of starting negotiations to join the EU. The Kremlin understands the September elections are the last chance to bring Moldova back into its orbit. This means the fight will be tough, and its outcome will determine whether the country becomes part of a European future or once again falls under the shadow of Russian influence.
Russia's imperial dreams may soon backfire. There's talks that part of the Russian Federation might start breaking away. Sounds exciting already, but it gets even better. The United States might have something to do with it. More in our report.
A high-profile initiative from the United States, Washington is considering the possibility of purchasing the Commander Islands from Russia. This idea was voiced by U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Jeffrey Fritz. And judging by how actively this statement is being promoted in the world press, Donald Trump is apparently not opposed to making such a deal with the Kremlin.
The United States is presented with a transformative opportunity that could strengthen Arctic security, reunite a divided indigenous population, and reaffirm America's leadership in a rapidly developing region. The proposal is for the United States to pursue a peaceful and pragmatic acquisition of the Commander Islands from the Russian Federation.
Located where the northern Pacific Ocean meets the Bering Sea, this remote archipelago is home to about 676 residents of the Russian Federation. Its size is approximately 431,000 square kilometers, which is roughly equivalent to the area of California. The price in question is no less than about $15 billion. The estimated value includes $6.5 billion for the land itself, $4 billion for the natural resources located there, another $2.5 billion that the U.S. would add for the biodiversity and conservation value of the Commander Islands, and an additional $2 billion that Washington is willing to pay for the local infrastructure. And all this for what? To monitor the potential activity of Chinese submarines.
By acquiring the Commander Islands, the United States would gain a crucial location for deploying advanced underwater surveillance technologies, including an integrated underwater monitoring system, hydroacoustic antenna arrays installed on the seabed, and radar systems integrated with satellites. This directly aligns with the objectives outlined in Section 18 of the Presidential Decree from April 2025 on restoring America's maritime dominance.
At the same time, the American Lieutenant Colonel acknowledges that the very idea of the United States acquiring new territories could be controversial against the backdrop of Russia's war against Ukraine. Purchasing territory from the Russian Federation would, in effect, mean transferring funds to an aggressor state. But instead of money, Washington proposes to allocate $15 billion through humanitarian or environmental programs in order to avoid directly funding the Russian budget. In Moscow, the American colonel's initiative was met with a harsh response, though without much specificity. Maria Zakharova stepped in to speak on behalf of Putin. The official representative of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs called the generous American proposal a terrible crime.
This shouldn't even be commented on, since selling out the motherland is considered both by law and by conscience one of the gravest crimes in our country.
But the local residents, upon hearing this news, were genuinely delighted. The prospect of becoming citizens of the United States inspired them. After all, life under Putin is anything but easy for the inhabitants of the Commander Islands.
Before you set out on a journey to the commanders, try to find them on the map. And once you see these tiny islands surrounded by ocean and learn that the highest point is just 755 meters, that there isn't a single tree here, then you can decide for yourself whether it's worth coming here or not. Because everything here is ruled by, it's flooding. The weather rules everything here, and it dictates everything.
But the wishes of the local residents alone won't be enough for a fateful deal between the US and Russia. As they admit in Washington, they don't really believe in the success of this undertaking. However, they're also in no hurry to turn down the offer.
After all, Donald Trump, of course, we understand that he's a man who wants a lot of deals, financial deals, profitable deals, including with Russia. But after talking with Vladimir Putin so many times, not once, not a single time, has he managed to achieve anything. They talk about grandchildren, about hockey, about movies, about anything at all except business. Nothing works out with Vladimir Putin. It's impossible to agree on anything.
And even Russia itself does not have the right to dispose of its own commander islands, military analysts explain. In such a delicate matter, Putin relies entirely on Beijing's will. Whatever Xi Jinping says, that's what the Kremlin will do.
Russia is not a sovereign actor. It truly isn't. That's why Trump publicly said, I have nothing to talk about with Putin. I won't speak with him because Putin no longer influences the processes. He is completely dependent on China, and the further it goes, the more dependent he becomes. And everyone understands this perfectly well.
Donald Trump clearly has some ideas about how to interact more closely with China and what can be done, what compromises can be made, where pressure can be applied, and so on. In other words, he clearly has some underlying, strategy, not just tactics, but an actual strategy, some far-reaching plans regarding China. And that's exactly why moments like these arise.
China's growing interest in the Arctic only increases the relevance of the American initiative. Beijing is actively promoting the Polar Silk Road, building Arctic infrastructure, and expanding its dual-purpose fleet. The high-profile statement by the American military sends a clear signal to China that the US is also interested in participating in the Polar Silk Road project and in jointly controlling it with the PRC. But this time, as has generally been the case since the start of the full-scale invasion, Russia and Putin are left out of the picture. No one is even considering inviting them to share in the new markets.
Russia has become a proxy state of China, is completely dependent on China, and is no longer independent.
Finally, not long ago, American singer Azealia Banks marked the physical condition of Mariupol defender Alexander Kirenko after he posted a photo of himself before and after Russian captivity. The Ukrainian decided to respond, and he did it with dignity.
My name is Alexander Kirenko. I am a Ukrainian Marine who participated in the defense of Mariupol. In the spring of 2022, I was captured, where I spent 3 years. The other day, I saw a post by the American singer Azealia Banks, who made fun of my photos and my physical condition after captivity. I am Ukrainian, and I support freedom of speech. Each of us has the right to express our opinion, but our conscience and honor should impose certain restrictions. Azealia, I wish that none of your loved ones receive such a diet that Ukrainian prisoners of war receive. Constant humiliation, beatings and constant hunger. I know the tragedy that African Americans have experienced, and I have personally experienced how the experience of captivity breaks the human soul. Even those generations who have not seen this hell feel the trauma of captivity. It is up to each of us what to do with this experience, to become stronger and teach our children to fight for their future, or it will break us and break the future of our children. Torture is a crime. Slavery has no place in a civilized world. People are created for freedom and mutual understanding. And I teach all my children exactly this way. I teach to be responsible for every word spoken, that every word is the seed of action, and every world tragedy began with some wrong word. Glory to Ukraine.
Heroям slava. Glory to heroes. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your support. Strength to Ukraine's defenders. Glory to Ukraine. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share this video. See you next time.